What if everything you know about Earth is backwards literally? Every sunrise, every ocean current, every desert on the map, all of it depends on one invisible motion most people never think about. Earth spins from west to east at nearly 1,600 kilometers per hour near the equator. Fast enough that if the planet suddenly reversed direction, the atmosphere wouldn't keep up. And for a few terrifying moments, the entire surface of Earth would become a weapon. Winds faster than fighter jets would rip across continents. Oceans would rise into walls of water. Entire cities would vanish before anyone understood what was happening. But that's only if the change happened instantly. So let's skip the apocalypse. Imagine Earth had always spun the opposite way. Since the very beginning. A mirror version of our world where the sun rises in the west, sets in the east, and history unfolds under completely different skies. At first, that sounds harmless. Maybe even poetic. But here's the strange part. A backward spinning Earth wouldn't just look different. It would completely rewrite the planet itself. Forests would grow where deserts exist today. Frozen countries would become warmer. Entire ecosystems would evolve differently. And one region on Earth, the Sahara Desert, might never become a desert at all. That single change would trigger a chain reaction stretching through oceans, weather systems, biology, and even the air you breathe right now. And this is where it gets weird. Earth's rotation controls something most people never notice: the direction of wind and water. The spin of the planet bends moving air through the Coriolis effect, creating global wind belts and steering ocean currents like invisible highways. Change the spin, and those highways reverse. Which means the climate map of Earth gets completely redrawn. But that's not even the craziest part. Because somewhere on this alternate Earth, another desert begins to grow. And it's probably not where you think. Right now, the Atlantic Ocean acts like a giant heating system for Europe. Warm water flows north through currents like the Gulf Stream, carrying tropical heat across the ocean. That's why parts of Western Europe stay surprisingly mild despite sitting so far north. But on a backwards spinning Earth, that current weakens or disappears entirely. And suddenly, Europe changes. Cold Pacific-driven currents begin pushing icy water toward the continent instead. Winters become brutal. Coastlines freeze harder. Storms intensify. Cities built around mild climates struggle to survive in a world that feels more like Siberia. But here's the twist. Russia, one of the coldest major regions on Earth today, actually becomes warmer. The climate balance flips. Places once buried under snow for months begin thawing. Massive stretches of land become more habitable. Agriculture spreads northward. And that changes geopolitics, migration, and civilization itself. But the real transformation happens somewhere else. Africa. Today, the Sahara is the largest hot desert on Earth. A sea of sand so massive it can be seen from space. But scientists believe a reversed Earth rotation could dramatically weaken the dry atmospheric systems that created it, meaning the Sahara might stay green. Imagine rivers cutting through regions now buried in dunes. Vast grasslands replacing endless sand. Rainfall returning to areas that haven't seen regular water in thousands of years. What happens next changes everything. Because deserts don't just affect landscapes. They affect global temperatures, ecosystems, and even the amount of dust in the atmosphere. The Sahara alone sends millions of tons of dust across the Atlantic every year, feeding the Amazon rainforest with nutrients. Without that desert, the Amazon itself could evolve differently. And this is where the planet starts becoming almost unrecognizable. Because while Africa grows greener, another region begins drying out fast. South America, especially Brazil. Areas once lush start losing moisture. New barren zones spread outward. Even parts of the southern United States become far more arid than today. The deserts don't disappear. They just move. And humanity would move with them. Think about that for a second. The places humans call normal only exist because Earth spins in one specific direction. Reverse it, and civilization itself reorganizes. Trade routes shift. Farming zones relocate. Coastal weather changes. Entire populations migrate toward regions that suddenly become fertile. Nations rise in places that are frozen wastelands today. But here's the strange part. Most people imagine a backwards Earth as chaotic. In reality, scientists believe it could actually become greener overall. More vegetation. More rainfall in key regions. Fewer giant deserts. At first, that sounds like paradise. More forests mean more oxygen. More plant life means stronger ecosystems. Huge regions of the planet become easier to inhabit. But there's a hidden danger nobody talks about. The oceans. Beneath the surface, microscopic organisms control far more of Earth's atmosphere than forests ever could. Tiny marine life called phytoplankton produces massive amounts of the oxygen you breathe. And among them, one ancient organism stands above the rest. Cyanobacteria. Billions of years ago, cyanobacteria changed Earth forever. Before they existed, Earth's atmosphere contained almost no oxygen. Life as we know it was impossible. Then these microscopic organisms evolved photosynthesis and flooded the atmosphere with oxygen, triggering one of the greatest transformations in planetary history. Without them, humans never exist. But on a reverse-spinning Earth, ocean circulation changes so dramatically that cyanobacteria could become dominant again. And that's when things get unsettling. Because too much oxygen can be just as dangerous as too little. Higher oxygen levels make fires spread faster. Ecosystems behave differently. Even animal evolution changes. Insects once grew to terrifying sizes during ancient high-oxygen eras. Dragonflies with wingspans larger than hawks ruled the skies. Now imagine an Earth where oxygen levels keep rising again. The atmosphere itself starts changing. And this is where the story stops being about geography and starts becoming about survival. Because humanity may not even be built for this version of Earth. But that's not even the craziest part. The truly terrifying thing about Earth's rotation isn't that it controls the weather. It's that almost every natural system on the planet quietly depends on it. Ocean currents, jet streams, rain cycles, migration patterns, seasons, even the distribution of nutrients across the seas. Change the spin, and you trigger a domino effect across the entire biosphere. And humans would notice it immediately. On this alternate Earth, maps would look familiar, but feel wrong. Western Europe becomes colder and harsher. Northern Asia softens. Africa blooms. South America dries. Entire coastlines experience different storm patterns. History itself changes. Maybe ancient civilizations rise in different places. Maybe trade empires form around completely new oceans. Maybe certain nations never become powerful at all. But here's the weirdest part. Most people think Earth's spin is permanent, untouchable, stable. It isn't. Earth's rotation actually changes constantly, just very slowly. Massive earthquakes can shift it slightly. Melting glaciers redistribute planetary weight. Even the moon gradually affects Earth's spin over time. Not enough to reverse it, of course, but enough to remind us that the planet beneath our feet is far less fixed than it feels. And that realization leads to an even darker question. If a simple reversal can transform deserts into forests and warm, frozen continents, how delicate is the world we already live in? Because modern civilization was built around today's climate patterns. Ports, cities, farms, infrastructure, all optimized for the current Earth. Change the winds, and food systems collapse. Change rainfall, and economies fail. Shift ocean currents, and entire nations struggle to adapt. What happens next changes everything. Because the more scientists study Earth's systems, the more they realize how interconnected everything really is. A current in one ocean affects rainfall on another continent. A desert in Africa feeds forests in South America. Tiny organisms in the sea regulate the air in your lungs. Nothing exists in isolation. And on a backward spinning Earth, every one of those connections rewires itself. Now imagine standing on a beach in this alternate world. The sun rises in the west. Cold winds move in directions that feel wrong. Ocean currents carry heat to unfamiliar places. Forests cover lands that should be deserts. Ancient human history unfolds under completely different environmental pressures. To the people living there, that version of Earth would feel normal, and ours would seem impossible. But here's the final twist. Earth's rotation might be one of the biggest hidden reasons humanity exists at all. If the winds were different, maybe early civilizations never formed where they did. If rainfall patterns shifted, maybe agriculture emerged elsewhere, or much later. If ocean currents changed oxygen levels too drastically, maybe complex life evolved along a completely different path. Or maybe humans never appear. That's the unsettling thing about planets. Tiny changes create massive consequences. And Earth is balanced on countless invisible systems we barely notice until we imagine losing them. But here's the strange part. A backwards Earth wouldn't necessarily be deadlier. In some ways, it could even be richer with life. Greener continents, more vegetation, new ecosystems thriving where barren landscapes once stood. Yet the very changes making the planet flourish could also make it hostile to us. Because evolution doesn't care about humans. It only cares about adaptation. And maybe that's the biggest illusion of all. We think Earth was designed for us. But we only exist because we happen to evolve under one very specific version of it. One spin direction, one climate balance, one fragile chain of events. Change that chain, and everything changes with it. So the next time you watch the sun rise in the east, remember something unsettling. There may be another version of Earth where it rises in the west. And in that world, you might not survive long enough to see it set.